Chapter 544, Does that prove it? Yun Qingyue said, We still have time before the deadline, but the negotiation has not concluded yet. We need to leave time for each sect to prepare, so we have to be quick about it. Saying so, not only did she not slow down, she even accelerated a little. Seeing this, Wu Jun had no choice but to follow suit. After speeding all the way, Skysword Peak began to peek out in the distance. Suddenly, Wu Jun spoke. Actually, we can try to send a ghost cultivator to assassinate him. If we can kill him, all our troubles will be solved. But what if it fails? If they failed, it would only enrage Yi further, and the consequences would be unpredictable. In fact, the Divine Ocean Realm experts did consider dispatching highly skilled ghost cultivators, but the risk was too great. Without even mentioning anything else, Yi was proficient in the way of wards, and even if he was only making a temporary stop at Skysword Peak, he must have set up alarm wards in his vicinity, so the ghost cultivators may not be able to sneak up to him without being caught. Once they were discovered, then with Yi's domineering strength, things definitely wouldn't end well for the ghost cultivators. It was for these concerns that the Thousand Demon Ridge didn't dare to act rashly and instead sent Wu Jun and Yun Qingyue to negotiate with him. Arriving above Skysword Peak, the two swept their eyes around the area and found a figure sitting at the top of the Spirit Peak. Over there, Yun Qingyue said, then descended her flight-type artifact towards the ground while Wu Jun followed closely behind. In a moment, the two landed about a few dozen meters away from Lu Yi. When they saw him, they were both inwardly surprised as they saw no traces of purple lightning lingering around Lu Ye's body. Based on the information they had received before, the purple lightning coiling around Lu Ye's body should have become almost palpable in appearance after breaking into the New Moon Sect's outpost and killing over 50 cultivators, but when he appeared in the Clouded Sun Clan's outpost less than half a day later, that lightning had already disappeared without a trace, only reappearing again once he took another life. But now, it was gone again. This undoubtedly indicated that Yi indeed possessed the means to suppress the judgment of the heavens, but could such a miraculous method truly exist in this world? While they were observing Lu Yi, the latter, who was immersed in his book, also looked up at them, and he was instantly attracted by Yun Qingyue's appearance. To have been known as a heavenly beauty to the men of her generation, she was naturally a great beauty, and beautiful things could always lift a person's mood. When his gaze shifted downwards, his eyes lit up even more. This slight movement naturally did not escape Yun Qingyue's sharp eyes, but she was helpless. This brat was indeed as the rumors suggested. Fortunately, he looked at her without any lecherous intentions in his gaze, and he quickly averted his eyes. Lu Yi glanced at Wu Jun as well, but he didn't pay much attention to him. What he could ascertain was the fact that neither were in the Spirit Creek realm, nor the Cloud River realm. At the very least, they would be real Lake Realm cultivators, but it was highly unlikely for them to be in the Divine Ocean realm. What did puzzle Lu Yi slightly, however, was the woman's age. From her appearance alone, she didn't seem older than himself. But for someone with cultivation in at least the real Lake Realm, how could she be so young? For her to have such an ambiguous appearance, one could only say that the woman preserved her beauty well. Are you cultivator Yi of the Crimson Blood Sect? Yun Qingyue was the first to speak. This young man before them was the only person in history to have caused such turmoil in the Spirit Creek battlefield with his own strength and left the Thousand Demon Ridge completely helpless. Despite her cultivation level surpassing Lu Yi by far, Yun Qingyue had no intention of underestimating him. Besides, she had a gentle character to begin with. They had seen Lu Ye's portrait before coming here, which matched the person before them, but she still needed to confirm it. Not only did she have an enchanting appearance, even her voice was soft and pleasant as a passing spring breeze. To address Lu Yi as a fellow cultivator, as a real Lake Realm cultivator, was enough to show her full sincerity. Given her cultivation level and status, she could easily address Lu Yi as little friend, or simply by name. One and the same. Lu Yi put away the book in his hand. In his mind, he was speculating the Thousand Demon Ridge's intentions in sending this woman here. He quickly concluded that these two had not come to deliver the peace offerings. What evidence do you have to prove that you're Yi? Wu Jun suddenly spoke. Before coming here, He had discussed with Yun Qingyue that one of them would play the villain and the other the reasonable negotiator, which was common during negotiations. That was also the reason why the Thousand Demon Ridge sent 2 people. If both were easy to talk to, then what was the point of negotiating? That was why someone had to be there to play the tough character so as to highlight the sincerity of the other person, which would make it easier to bargain during negotiations. Wu Jun had no personal malice towards Lu Yi, and the difference in their cultivation levels was evident, but as a cultivator from the Thousand Demon Ridge faction, Lu Ye's actions naturally made him somewhat resentful for his allies, and so he would naturally not be courteous with him. What proof do you want? Lu Yi didn't believe that these 2 hadn't seen his portrait before coming here. Wu Jun said, I heard that Yi has a little white beast by his side that's always with him, but I don't seem to be seeing it around. It's not here. He had to send Tao Zhenyu back to the outpost, so Amber had to accompany them. Both spirit and mutant were a linked pair and couldn't stray too far from each other. A Cloud River Realm cultivator should be subject to the judgment of the heavens after invading the Spirit Creek battlefield and killing others, but I don't see any traces of it on you. How can you prove that you're Yi? Wu Jun was adamant. No matter what, he had to assert his authority and let Yi know that the Thousand Demon Ridge was no easy target. Most importantly, Wu Jun wanted to know how Lu Yi managed to suppress the judgment of the heavens. It would be worth any price to find that information out. The inviolable saber was unsheathed, then bright glints emerged before 3 crescent-shaped saber lights were swept in Wu Jun's direction. Wu Jun never expected that Lu Yi would actually attack him. When he saw the 3 saber lights coming at him, his expression changed, and he immediately circulated his spiritual power and vitality to protect himself. He was a body-tempering cultivator, and a real lake realm body-tempering cultivator at that, who was past the stage of relying on spirit artifacts for defense. His own physical body was the strongest protection he could have. Do. Following 3 muffled sounds, the aura around Wu Jun's body flickered, and he was forced back several steps before stabilizing himself. His face immediately turned serious. Even Yun Qingyue, who was watching from the side, revealed a look of surprise. It was then that she realized that the rumors were indeed true, and Yi's strength was as domineering as was said to be. The 3 saber lights she saw had exceeded her understanding of what a Spirit Creek Realm cultivator was capable of. Now, is that enough evidence? Lu Yi silently put away his blade. Wu Jun was silent, his heart filled with shock. Even though it was just 3 saber lights, it allowed him to glimpse the extent of his strength. If they were to fight to the death here, then based on his current strength, he wouldn't last more than 3 moves against Yi. The young were truly a force to be reckoned with. Please rest your anger, Cultivator Lu. Senior Brother Wu and I truly haven't met you before. We came here today for an important matter, and Senior Brother Wu is just being cautious. There is no ill will behind it. She bowed gracefully to Lu Yi. Yun Qingyue from Snow Feather Clan greets Cultivator Lu. Wu Jun reluctantly cupped his fist and grumbled, Wind Cloud Mansion Wu Jun. Lu Yi had seen both the Snow Feather Clan and Wind Cloud Mansion on the 10-point map before, and both were first-tier sects. One was from Leizhou, while the other was from Yuzhou, all information that was labeled on the map. Lu Yi nodded slightly and returned the greeting. Crimson Blood Sect, Lu Yi. Despite being from different factions, they were still experts in the real lake realm or above, so it was only appropriate to show respect. What have the 2 of you come for? It doesn't seem like you are here to deliver something, Lu Yi asked, cutting straight to the point. Yun Qingyue explained, to be frank, the Divine Ocean Realm Masters are still discussing whether or not they should agree to your demands. After all, such a thing has happened once before, and our Thousand Demon Ridge was agreed to compromise then in hopes that you would not return to the Spirit Creek battlefield after you left. Unexpectedly, after just a few months, the same situation has repeated itself, so the Divine Ocean Realm Masters are finding this situation difficult to accept. Mainly, they didn't expect Lu Yi to continue killing recklessly in the Spirit Creek battlefield even after advancing into the Cloud River realm. Normally, higher-level cultivators would be constrained when invading the Spirit Creek battlefield, but Lu Yi seemed to act without any fear. Senior brother Wu and I were entrusted by the many divine ocean realm masters to come here and discuss a mutually acceptable solution with you. Lu Yi kept his gaze fixed on Yun Qingyue, who faced him with an amiable smile. How do you propose we discuss this? Yun Qingyue answered, regardless of what happened, Cultivator Lu can be considered to have bullied the weak in your actions this time. There are rules on the battlefield, and forcibly invading into the Spirit Creek battlefield with your Cloud River realm level of cultivation and destroying the Thousand Demon Ridge's outposts is indeed inappropriate. If all the cultivators from the major factions were to act like this, would the Spirit Creek battlefield not then descend into chaos? What do you think? Who else under the heavens has the ability to do what I did? Yun Qingyue instantly fell silent. That was exactly the question that stumped the Thousand Demon Ridge. Without an answer to this question, they would never be qualified to negotiate with Lu Yi on equal terms. If anyone from Thousand Demon Ridge wants to emulate me, they are welcome to do so without any reservations. I have the ability, so I set the rules. Those without the ability should obediently follow. As for bullying the weak, in terms of age, most of the core circle cultivators are older than me. In terms of cultivation level, the heavens have suppressed my cultivation level at Heaven 9, which means that is all the power I can exert. So, where does this bullying of the weak come from? Yun Qingyue felt helpless at his questioning. What you say is true, but your demands are indeed too harsh. Your demands bled out the various sects in the Thousand Demon Ridge last time, and they will not agree to such a thing again. The Divine Ocean Realm Masters have already reached a consensus on this matter. I know you suffered greatly in the Carnage Coliseum and incurred huge losses, so it's understandable that you expect such compensation. However, you have already destroyed 2 outposts and killed many people. Is that not enough to ease your anger? Lu Yi gazed indifferently at her star-like eyes. If Cultivator Yun is here to talk nonsense, there's no need to say more. I will only be waiting here until the end of the 10-day deadline. Chapter 545, Choice of the Masters. On Skysword Peak, Yun Qingyue wanted to try and persuade Lu Yi further, but he raised his hand to stop her. I've stated my conditions, whether you agree or not is your business. There's no need to discuss anything with me. Wu Jun stepped forward and said sternly, if we don't agree, what then? Do you really have the guts to destroy all of the Thousand Demon Ridge's outposts? You think I don't? Lu Yi turned his gaze to Wu Jun. I believe that Cultivator Lu does have the capability. Wu Jun stared back at him, unflinching. Considering what happened a few months ago, with so many of the Thousand Demon Ridge's core circle outposts being destroyed and so many cultivators being killed, Lu Yi did indeed have the ability. However, having the ability didn't necessarily mean he would do it. If he really did, it wouldn't bode well for the Grand Sky Coalition either, and when that happened, the entire Spirit Creek battlefield would descend into chaos. If Yi was at all rational, he wouldn't make such a reckless move. You're right. It is indeed impractical to destroy all the outposts. Lu Ye's tone changed, and he spoke with a thoughtful expression. But among so many core circle outposts, picking out 3, 5, or even 10 sects shouldn't affect much. Let's start with the Snow Feather Clan and the Wind Cloud Mansion. What do you both think? Did we challenge you? Both Yun Qingyue and Wu Jun's expressions changed. If Lu Yi really acted as he said, the Thousand Demon Ridge really wouldn't have a good way to deal with it. Compared to the number of core circle sects in the Thousand Demon Ridge, 3 or even 10 weren't many. As Lu Yi said, even if they were occupied, it wouldn't affect the overall situation. He had already done something similar just a few months ago where he captured nearly 30 outposts. If he were to attack again, who knew which outpost he would capture? Until this matter was resolved, every sect in the core circle would be living anxious lives as if a blade was hanging over their necks. Nobody could ensure that their outposts would remain safe from Yi's tyranny. If it so happened that Yi paid them a visit, one would undoubtedly be willing to pay a price in exchange for the safety of their outpost. As for Lu Ye's statement about starting with the Snow Feather Clan and the Wind Cloud Mansion, it was a clear threat. Yun Qingyue and Wu Jun couldn't be unaware of it. Yun Qingyue felt helpless. It seemed that her intervention did not bring about any special effect in the slightest. Though this young man had taken an extra glance at her when they first met, it didn't earn her any special treatment. How could someone so young be so difficult to deal with? She quickly spoke again. Please rest your anger, Cultivator Lu. Senior brother Wu and I came here in order to discuss and find a solution that can satisfy everyone. How about this? The Thousand Demon Ridge is willing to provide resources worth 3 million contribution points. If you agree, I can have someone deliver it at once. 3 million contribution points worth of resources, even when calculated based on the purchase price of goods from the Vault of Providence, was still a sizable amount. It was enough to sustain any cultivator for a lifetime. Though Cloud River Realm cultivators could accumulate more contribution points than Spirit Creek Realm cultivators, most of them would have only a few thousand to tens of thousands of contribution points, so the terrifying number of 3 million contribution points would undoubtedly make any Cloud River Realm cultivator so excited that they could hardly breathe. Lu Yi, however, remained calm. He had received resources worth 20 to 30 million contribution points from the Thousand Demon Ridge last time, so what was a mere 3 million? It was almost a tenfold difference. The Thousand Demon Ridge's offer today was like throwing scraps to a beggar. Though his demand seemed unjust, it had always been a common tactic for two major factions to weaken the enemy's resources while strengthening their own, something which anyone would be happy to see. Furthermore, there were reasons to justify his demands. Lu Yi didn't speak, and Yun Qingyue didn't either. They both waited silently. Instead, Wu Jun continued to play his role and said sternly, Cultivator Lu, offering resources worth 3 million contribution points is already the greatest sincerity that the Thousand Demon Ridge can show. One should not be too greedy. Cultivator Yun. Lu Yi ignored Wu Jun and called out to Yun Qingyue softly. Yun Qingyue immediately showed an attentive attitude. Please speak, Cultivator Lu. If the Thousand Demon Ridge is troubled by my demands, we can invalidate my previous proposal. Resources are convenient, so just give me something worth 300,000 contribution points. Rather than show a happy expression, Yun Qingyue's expression became much more serious. Does Cultivator Lu still have any other conditions? The sudden change in Lu Ye's stance indicated that something was waiting for her. Give me another golden body token, and we'll consider the matter settled. Certainly it was true that more than one golden body token existed in the world. Lu Yi obtained one in the Carnage Coliseum, so Thousand Demon Ridge probably had reserves too, though not in large numbers. This was a life-saving trump card for any cultivator. After experiencing its power, Lu Yi had been unable to forget it. Compared to the loss of a golden body token, the 100,000 contribution points he spent on the Divine Opportunity column in the Carnage Coliseum was negligible. Contribution points could be accumulated slowly, but golden body tokens were not easily obtainable. You jest, Cultivator Lu. I have never even seen a golden body token in my life, so where would I find one for you? Wu Jun's face darkened. And even if they did have one, the Thousand Demon Ridge wouldn't possibly give it to Lu Yi. The golden body token was valuable even for Divine Ocean Realm cultivators since it was a divine protection bestowed by the heavens. Before its time limit, no one could break through its defense. In that case, there's no need to say more. The two options are before you, so just choose for yourselves. Wu Jun shouted, Yi, we came here to discuss with you in good faith. Don't try to take advantage of us. Lu Ye's fingers touched the inviolable saber, and his eyes were slightly downcast. Do you think the Thousand Demon Ridge will seek revenge for you if I kill the two of you here? Unless, are you curious to know whether I can actually kill you or not? Wu Jun and Yun Qingyue's expressions changed, both of them becoming alert. Fortunately, Lu Yi showed no signs of attacking them. However, it was evident that he was getting impatient, and if they lingered here, this young man might actually make his move. If they really died here, the trip would have been pointless. Iya's hands were already stained with the blood of Thousand Demon Ridge cultivators, and 2 more casualties wouldn't matter. At this thought, Yun Qingyue spoke. We will report our discussion with Cultivator Lu back as soon as possible, and we will come again to inform you of any results. Saying so, she signaled to Wu Jun with her eyes, Then they both flew away from Skysword Peak together. After flying a dozen kilometers away, Yun Qingyue took in a long breath, her chest rising high before falling again. In that moment, she truly felt that she had had a brush with death. She never imagined that as a real Lake Realm cultivator, she would be so powerless in front of a Cloud River Realm cultivator. Not far away from her, Wu Jun's expression seemed normal, but there was also a trace of fear in his eyes. Send a message back and see what the Divine Ocean Realm Masters decide, Yun Qingyue said. Wu Jun nodded in silence. Without delay, they relayed the result of their negotiation to the cultivators back at their own outposts, who would then pass it back to Jiuzhou. However, both of them knew that the Thousand Demon Ridge was likely to suffer heavy losses again this time, unless they dared to ignore Ye's threat. But would anyone dare to ignore him? As he said, he wouldn't attack all the outposts, just select a few of them. Who would dare to bet that their outpost wouldn't become one of the unlucky ones? That was not something they could gamble on. The most pressing matter was, if Yi went directly to one of the Thousand Demon Ridge's outposts and asked for a peace offering, then threatened to attack their outpost if they didn't pay up, what would one do in such a situation? Give in to his demands, of course. Compared to the amount they had spent on their own outpost, what was a few 100,000 contributions worth of resources worth? As such, Lu Yi only needed to spend some time to visit each outpost one by one, and he could still achieve his goal without completely disrupting the balance of the Spirit Creek battlefield. They didn't have to wait long, and in less than half a day, they got a response. Sure enough, the Divine Ocean Realm Masters compromised. They had no choice, and even though it was shameful, they had no capital to refuse. In response, however, the Thousand Demon Ridge also had their own demands. The message clearly stated that if Yi couldn't accept these demands, then the Thousand Demon Ridge was prepared for a mutually destructive ending. At that time, they would abandon all their outposts and gather the forces in the core circle to destroy all the Grand Sky Coalition's outposts as well. To let both Jade and Stone burn together in complete destruction could also be seen as the last resort of the Thousand Demon Ridge. After reading the message, Yun Qingyue sighed. She didn't know whether Yi would accept these demands either. Strictly speaking, the Thousand Demon Ridge was the disadvantaged party, and if Yi refused, nobody could do anything to him about it. After a moment of contemplation, Yun Qingyue said, "Senior brother Wu, I'll go by myself this time, you wait here." With the negotiation coming to a close, there was no need for the tough guy to appear anymore in case it stiffened the atmosphere later. How could I just stay behind? What if Yi tries to harm you? How would you defend yourself then? Wu Jun shook his head immediately. Yun Qingyue said, "With his strength, even if you and I join forces, we would still be no match for him if he decides to attack." What she said left a bitter taste in Wu Jun's mouth, yet he could not refute her. "Senior brother Wu, just wait for me here. I'll be back soon." That Yi doesn't seem like someone who can't be reasoned with. In that case, be careful, junior sister. Keep in touch with me at all times. Wu Jun nodded. Yun Qingyue took out her flower basket spirit artifact and flew away. In a short while, she arrived at Skysword Peak again, and the young man was still sitting in the same place, holding a roll of paper which he studied attentively. The sunlight broke through the sea of clouds and shone on the young man's profile, giving him a somewhat scholarly air. However, this was the man who was giving the entirety of the Great Thousand Demon Ridge faction an extreme headache. Moreover, he was currently holding a butcher's blade over their heads, preparing to take a slice out of the Thousand Demon Ridge. When his blade came down, none of the core circle sects of the Thousand Demon Ridge could escape. "Cultivator Lu," Yun Qingyue called out in a soft voice before tucking her hair behind her ear, and her already impeccable appearance seemed to gain another hint of charm. "Have they come to a decision?" Lu Yi didn't even lift his head and continued pouring through the contents of his slips, which made Yun Qingyue feel as if she had launched her fist only for it to land on cotton. The Divine Ocean Realm Masters have discussed the conditions, and they can agree to Cultivator Lu's demands. However, they also have one request. If Cultivator Lu can agree to that request, then we will send everything you asked for within 2 days. Speak. The Thousand Demon Ridge hopes that Cultivator Lu will never return to Spirit Creek battlefield in the future. Chapter 546, Pettiness. On Skysword Peak, Lu Yi wrapped up the slips in his hand and looked up at Yun Qingyue. His gaze was calm, but his words were decisive. Go. I won't kill you. And also, pass on this message to your superiors. As long as this Lu is alive, I will come to the Spirit Creek battlefield every 6 months and pick out 30 core circle sects to raise their outposts. Saying so, he stood up slowly and brought out his flight-type artifact as if he was going to leave at once. Alarmed, Yun Qingyue quickly called out, Please wait, Cultivator Lu. What else do you want? Lu Yi cocked his head to the side while looking at her. The Thousand Demon Ridge wanted him to refrain from setting foot on the Spirit Creek battlefield in the future, but he would never accept such a condition. He had no need to enter the Spirit Creek battlefield anymore after advancing into the Cloud River realm, nor would he threaten the Thousand Demon Ridge with either the cultivators in the Spirit Creek battlefield or the matters concerning it, as one may do the same thing once or twice, but never thrice. Including this time, he had extorted the Thousand Demon Ridge twice, and if he were to do it again, they would definitely tolerate his threats and would most likely fight to the death with him. However, it should be up to his own wishes whether or not he chooses to enter the Spirit Creek battlefield. It was not up to the Thousand Demon Ridge to force him to stay out of it. If they insisted on maintaining that stance, then there was no longer any need for them to speak further. Facing Lu Yi, Yun Qingyue felt powerless and could only sigh. Cultivator Lu, the matter is still negotiable. She knew that as they had reached this point of the negotiation, then she must never show any signs of weakness on her end. However, it was no longer possible. Lu Yi was taking his leave, and if she did not show weakness now, then the 30 sects in the Thousand Demon Ridge faction may end up having to suffer. And he even said that he would come once every half a year. How could anyone withstand that? If that truly were to happen, then there will be no Spirit Creek Realm cultivator in any core circle sect that will have a peaceful space to cultivate in the future. The Spirit Creek Realm was the foundation for all sects, and if that foundation was to be broken, then it would shake the future development of the entire sect. Standing on the spirit boat, Lu Yi looked at Yun Qingyue in silence. Yun Qingyue pursed her red lips and finally broke the silence after a long while. Unless a situation like what you experienced in the Carnage Coliseum happens again, then Cultivator Lu must not attack the outposts in the Spirit Creek battlefield for no reason. Compared to the previous condition, this had much more leeway. It did not restrict Lu Ye's entry into the Spirit Creek battlefield and instead restricted his actions against the Thousand Demon Ridge's sects and clans, but that was only if the incident in the Carnage Coliseum did not happen again. Though they were simple words, Lu Yi did manage to glean some information about the Thousand Demon Ridge's stance. Clearly, they still had not given up on killing him. Inside the Carnage Coliseum, so many of the Thousand Demon Ridge's experts who had cultivation levels that far surpassed Lu Yi pursued after him jointly, and they even employed the secret techniques of the tracking disc to make it so he had nowhere to run or hide. In the end, Lu Yi found himself encircled by hundreds, even thousands of people. Setting aside the long-standing grudges and disputes between the two major factions, the Thousand Demon Ridge had indeed gone overboard in that event. He was fortunate to have survived the attack, but not without paying a tremendous price. So, when he came to the Spirit Creek battlefield seeking revenge, no one could blame him for doing so. However, if in the future, the Thousand Demon Ridge were to target Lu Yi again, they would undoubtedly exercise more caution and would never give him the chance to retaliate again. This is the bottom line of the Divine Ocean Realm Master's compromise. If Cultivator Lu cannot agree, then please feel free to do as you please. After saying her piece, she stared at Lu Yi anxiously, unsure of whether he would accept. Lu Yi calmly nodded. Sure. Anything else? While he was aware that the Thousand Demon Ridge had not given up on killing him, honestly, the path of cultivation would be dull without such trials. Ever since he stepped onto the path of cultivation, Lu Yi had been facing opponents stronger than himself, especially after his identity as a disciple of the Crimson Blood sect was exposed. He had faced various forms of suppression and opposition without cessation. It was precisely through these trials that he advanced so triumphantly and dominated the Spirit Creek battlefield. The Thousand Demon Ridge also wouldn't fear targeting him again just because of this incident, and he had no grounds to demand that the Thousand Demon Ridge cease targeting him in the future either. These matters were mutually understood, and there was no need for explicit clarification. Seeing that Lu Yi had agreed, Yun Qingyue let out a long sigh of relief, and her expression eased considerably. She had always been kind in nature and was truly unwilling to witness excessive bloodshed. Furthermore, every injustice has its perpetrator and every debt its debtor. If Cultivator Lu wishes to seek reprisal in the future, please direct your efforts towards those truly responsible and do not involve innocent parties. The cultivators who troubled Lu Yi in the Carnage Coliseum were all from different backgrounds, but it was certain that not all of the Core Circle sect's disciples were involved. However, Lu Ye's conditions encompassed all the Core Circle sects, inadvertently subjecting many to undue harm, yet they could not explain themselves out of the situation. They couldn't just ask Lu Yi to raise his hand high in mercy because their own disciples were not part of the Carnage Coliseum incident, right? That would make them a laughingstock. Of course. Lu Yi nodded. Anything else? Yun Qingyue shook her head. No. For a moment, she felt taken aback. Was everything settled so easily? She had thought that Yi wouldn't agree so readily and had even prepared numerous arguments to persuade him only to find that none were necessary. You're done, but I have 2 more conditions. Yun Qingyue's expression stiffened, and she urged him nervously, please speak, Cultivator Lu. Inside the Carnage Coliseum, there was an individual named Xia Liang who wielded the blade. If I'm not mistaken, he should be from the Raving Bladesman. I won't be visiting the Raving Bladesman's outpost, but please relay this for me. Besides 30,000 contribution points worth of resources, they must also provide 20 sets of blade technique insights. Otherwise, I wouldn't mind paying them a visit. Yun Qingyue took careful note of it. Very well. As long as they were not unique copies, blade technique insights were not highly valuable. Even then, extra copies could be made. The Raving Bladesmen likely had an abundance of such insights, so 20 shouldn't be difficult for them to take out. Additionally, the Wind Cloud Mansion's share should be increased by 100,000 contribution points. The Wind Cloud Mansion. Yun Qingyue was speechless. Wasn't the Wind Cloud Mansion's senior brother Wu's sect? Yi asking the Wind Cloud Mansion to increase their offering by 100,000 was undoubtedly a response to Wu Jun's poor attitude during the previous negotiations. This young brat appeared reasonable on the surface but was actually quite petty. Putting up a show to manipulate me should come with consequences, don't you think so, Cultivator Yun? Lu Yi shot a glance at Yun Qingyue. Yun Qingyue forced a smile. It seems Cultivator Lu saw through our act from the start. It wasn't a particularly sophisticated tactic to begin with, so it was to be expected that they would be caught. With a sigh, Yun Qingyue continued, I will relay your conditions back to my faction, but before we conclude this, I must ask Cultivator Lu to sign the Sacred Pact. Very well. Verbal promises were not as binding as a Sacred Pact. Yun Qingyue promptly produced the Sacred Pact, listing a series of terms before handing it to Lu Yi to review. Lu Yi carefully inspected it, making sure there were no hidden loopholes before stamping his own handprint on it. Yun Qingyue, representing the Thousand Demon Ridge, also imprinted her handprint. Then the Sacred Pact radiated with a brilliant light that signified that the contract was formed. After putting away the Sacred Pact, Yun Qingyue felt much more relieved. Honestly, despite facing only a Cloud River Realm cultivator, the burden on her heart had been unprecedentedly heavy. Now that things had been settled, her mission was finally over. Well, Cultivator Lu, until we meet again. Yun Qingyue bowed gracefully to Lu Yi and summoned her flower basket spirit artifact, flying away. Lu Yi watched her leave and contemplated for a moment. Instead of continuing to read, he went to the side, retrieved his saber and cut down a large tree in a neat stroke before chopping it into several sections, busying himself in this manner. Time passed. 3 days later, Lu Yi, who sat on a stone reading, suddenly spoke up. Leave the items here. Take the corresponding wooden plaque for each sect's offering. You can take it as a return gift from this Lu. Once the 10-day deadline is up, the wooden plaques of the sects remaining here will be the sects I visit. Though there was no one in front of him, Lu Yi had perceived the presence of some unfamiliar auras around him. These people were naturally here to deliver the offerings, yet they hesitated to reveal themselves due to his imposing reputation. Hearing Lu Ye's words, they turned to look towards the area several meters away from him. There lay hundreds of wooden plaques, each carved with the name of a sect, corresponding to each sect in the Thousand Demon Ridge. Lu Yi had meticulously carved these wooden plaques based on the markings on the 10-point map, so he couldn't possibly miss any sect. Rather than a means to keep count, however, he was using this method to strengthen his memory. There were so many sects in the Thousand Demon Ridge. Through this, Lu Yi was able to more or less recognize the sects in the core circle, so if he bumped into any of the Thousand Demon Ridge's cultivators in the future, if he tried to ask for their sect names, this knowledge should help him match their background to what they claimed. Only now did they comprehend Lu Ye's intentions. It wasn't until a while later that people began showing themselves. They walked up to Lu Yi, placed down a storage bag before him, then took a wooden plaque with them before quickly departing. With someone to start things off, more people soon emerged, placing down their storage bags without a word and taking away their own sect's wooden plaques. Time passed, and as the pile of storage bags before Lu Yi grew, the number of wooden plaques shrank. Every cultivator who came to deliver the offerings could see the impressive stack of storage bags, and they knew that they contained valuable items worth millions of contribution points, but no one dared to be greedy. It took a lot to finally settle things with Yi, and if anything unexpected were to happen at this point, not only would Yi not spare them, the sects behind them would also draw the ire of the Thousand Demon Ridge faction. At a certain moment, Lu Yi could sense that the wooden plaque of the Raving Bladesmen had been taken. With a raise of his hand, he retrieved the storage bag that had just been left behind. Upon opening it, he found not only various treasures but also 20 sets of blade technique insights. Sure enough, that Xia Liang was indeed from the Raving Bladesmen. Otherwise, the Raving Bladesmen wouldn't have given in so obediently. When Lu Yi personally visited them before, he had only gotten 10 sets of blade technique insights out of them. Eagerly, Lu Yi began perusing one of the copies. Inwardly, he could only sigh since there were no sects within the Grand Sky Coalition that specialized in blade techniques. Otherwise, he could have furthered his training without needing to ask for blade technique insights from someone else. Moreover, the insights they provided were unlikely to be the best. Given Lu Ye's current strength and mastery of blade techniques, these insights could only offer minor improvements and wouldn't lead to any breakthroughs. If only the Grand Sky Coalition could conquer the Raving Bladesmen someday. Of course, that was not but a wishful thought. The Raving Bladesmen was a first-tier sect with a profound foundation. Conquering them was easier said than done. Chapter 547. Turns out it's a beast? 7 days after Lu Yi had spoken with Yun Qingyue, only 2 wooden plaques were left in front of him. This meant that out of all of the core circle sects in the Thousand Demon Ridge, only 2 did not come forward. And the words carved into the 2 wooden plaques were New Moon Sect and Clouded Sun Clan respectively. It was impossible for them to come. Their outposts have already been razed and some of their disciples were either injured or dead, so why would they still run over to send offerings to Lu Yi? Lu Yi had expected this, so he didn't care. He got up to stretch, feeling extremely spirited after meditating for this period of time. His work in the Spirit Creek battlefield was done and there was no longer any need for him to stay here. However, he could go and visit Hua Ci before he left. He wondered how she was doing, and based on the time that had passed since they last met, he reckoned that she had already advanced into the Cloud River realm. Summoning his spirit boat, he took to the skies and flew in the myriad poison forest direction. The wind whistled through Skysword Peak. Only 2 wooden plaques with different names carved onto them were left behind. Twice Lu Yi had raked in large amounts of resources from the Thousand Demon Ridge here, leaving the Skysword Peak to become a pain in the hearts of the many Thousand Demon Ridge cultivators. Even many years in the future, the cultivators of that faction would rather go around Skysword Peak than to ever step foot near it. The myriad poison forest was located within the core circle and was not too far from Skysword Peak. In one day, Lu Yi leisurely arrived at the space above the forest, a look of surprise emerging on his face. The myriad poison forest was different from how he remembered it. The most obvious change was the fact that the myriad poison forest seemed to have shrunken greatly in size, and the area that used to be enveloped in a fog of poison had now become safe to traverse. Overall, it seemed to have shrunken at least 30 to 40% in size. This place was a forbidden area of the Spirit Creek battlefield, and also a place that the cultivators would not choose to step into without good reason. Not only was the place still filled with an invisible fog of deadly poison, there were also many venomous insects living inside. Even a Heaven 9 cultivator would not be able to reach too deep into the forest. Could the shrinkage of the myriad poison forest domain have something to do with Wuxia? Lu Yi was aware that Wuxia needed to refine the poison fog for her cultivation, but how many months had gone by and the myriad poison forest looked like this already? If she were given more time, then wouldn't this forbidden area disappear completely? This woman was truly terrifying. He went straight inside the forest and made his way to its depths. He made his way to the wooden hut from before only to see a tall fence erected with the door to the hut tightly shut. Lu Yi went forward and knocked on the door. Anyone home? No response. He tried to sense inside, but there were no signs of vitality inside the wooden hut. Wuxia wasn't here? Lu Yi was surprised. He thought that Wuxia would keep on cultivating here, but he didn't expect to miss her completely, and he had no idea where she could have gone. He opened the door and went inside before studying the surroundings. There was not a single trace of dust in the hut, which undoubtedly meant that Wuxia still lived here. He just had no idea what she had gone off to do. Leaving the house, Lu Yi contemplated for a moment before heading to where Wuxia used to cultivate. Even when he used to live here, Wuxia did not cultivate in the hut, and that was because of the ward that Lu Yi had set up in the area. As long as the ward was up, it could keep the poison fog from encroaching, which made it difficult for her to cultivate. After walking a short distance, Lu Yi heard a gentle singing voice, as well as the sound of splashing water. This woman seemed to be in a good mood, but he wasn't sure what she was up to. He withdrew his aura and hid himself to try and give her a scare. She had been living alone here for several months without any contact with the outside world. She did not send him any messages either, so clearly she had no idea that he had arrived in the Spirit Creek battlefield. He was sure that she would definitely be surprised if he suddenly showed up out of the blue before her. Following the source of that song, he made his way through a short forest, and when he looked up, Lu Ye's expression turned stiff. A pool had appeared there at some point in time, but it was not very large, only around a dozen meters wide, and water in an abnormal shade of emerald rippled in the pool. Just looking at the water was enough to fill one with unease, so it was not hard to imagine just how toxic the water in the pool could be. Lu Yi had no idea how Wuxia had created this pool of poison, but it didn't exist when he and Yi used to stay here. Clearly, Wuxia must have created it later. Most importantly, Wuxia actually turned out to be bathing at this moment. She was practically fully immersed in the pool with only her head peeking above the surface. Two arms as delicate and fair as tender leeks lightly swung about on the water's surface, with several dainty toes coming out mischievously above the surface from time to time as she hummed a song he had never heard of. Just from what he could see alone, Lu Yi could guess the state that she was in right now. If he were to be found out, then surely he would be beaten up like some scoundrel, right? He never thought he would come here to see this either. Just as he was about to silently withdraw, the humming suddenly stopped. Then, Lu Yi felt a sharp gaze staring right at where he was hiding. He had a bad feeling about this. A splash sounded as Wuxia lifted a jade hand, and an emerald water arrow shot out from the pool, aimed accurately at Lu Ye's position. Should I hide or not? Lu Yi was caught in a dilemma. If he hid, it would make him seem guilty, but if not, he would definitely be exposed. Before he could come to a decision, the water arrow hit him right in the chest. It didn't hurt him, but the arrow transformed into an emerald mist that enveloped Lu Ye's body, blowing his cover. Then, Lu Yi felt a large billow of smoke rising from the tree of glyphs. In the water, Wuxia, who only had her head showing above the water, exclaimed with a smirk. I thought it was a little creature, but it turned out to be a beast. With feigned shock on her face, She spoke words that were even more poisonous than the water in the pool. Don't you start. Lu Yi grumbled. Who but me could come to a damned place like this? You knew it was me, so no need to put up an act. He could tell from how mild the arrow had been alone. Hua Xi knew that Lu Yi was immune to many poisons, so the focus on the arrow was on toxicity rather than lethality. Of course, if it wasn't Lu Yi who came, nothing more than death would await whoever it was that came here. The poison in the water was several times more toxic compared to what Lu Yi had experienced here in the myriad poison forest. HM? How am I supposed to know? Hua Xi giggled and splashed on the water. But what brought you here? Was the Cloud River battlefield not fun for you? No, it's great fun. Since he had already been exposed, Lu Yi simply went forward to the pool and crouched down, reaching out to scoop up some of the water with his hand. Even more smoke appeared above the tree of glyphs. Considering he might not have a large stock of fuel left, Lu Yi did not dare to mess around anymore. Otherwise, it would give Hua Xi a chance to mess with him. Something happened, so I came back. I figured I could come and visit while I'm here. So, I'm just an afterthought. Hua Xi's expression turned gloomy at once. If anyone who didn't know the situation saw this, they would think that Lu Yi had played her before abandoning her. Even while saying so, the movement of her hands did not stop. Her slender neck, fair skin, and even the fantastical part in the front could be faintly seen. Combined with her wet hair and sad expression, Lu Yi felt his heartstrings being tugged at. Lu Yi wouldn't believe that she didn't do it on purpose even if he were beaten to death. Enjoying the view? Hua Xi blushed, speaking shyly as she kept her head down amidst Lu Ye's gaze. Want to see more? Lu Yi sprang up at that. Can I? Hua Xi kept her head lowered and muttered in a voice as quiet as a mosquito. I wouldn't do this for anyone else, of course. But it's fine, if it's you. Saying so, she pressed her eyes shut and her long lashes trembled nervously. Then she slowly stood up, allowing the emerald water to flow down her smooth neck, revealing a heavenly image. Lu Ye's eyes widened like brass bells. You're a big idiot. Standing in the water, Hua Xi, who was wearing a dress, laughed so wantonly that her body arched back, taunting him. Lu Yi shut his eyes in pain. It was absolutely shameful of him to have had any expectations of this woman. But who could have guessed that a woman soaking in a pool would turn out to be completely dressed? Lu Yi stood up and made to leave. Hua Xi shouted at him from behind. Hey, where you going? None of your business. She got his hopes up about getting a view of divine beauty, only to then smash those hopes to the ground. He still had his dignity to upkeep. After a while, a groomed Hua Xi appeared in the wooden hut. There, she saw Lu Yi lying on a hammock in the courtyard with his hands behind his head, looking up at the sky, bored. Hua Xi walked up to Lu Yi, her body wrapped in fragrance, and she leaned down to look at him. Are you upset? What's there to be upset about? Lu Yi rolled his eyes. I'm hungry. Go make some food. Even though Hua Xi's food looked bad on the surface, the taste and effects were quite good. They were all very nutritious dishes. Very well. Saying so, Hua Xi leaned down even further. Before Lu Yi could react, a light peck landed on his forehead. Before she could pull back, Lu Yi grabbed her arms. Hua Xi was confused. What are you doing? What are you doing? Aren't you angry? I'm trying to make it up to you. She looked as if there was absolutely nothing wrong with what she just did. Am I a kid? Do I need you to kiss me on the forehead? Lu Yi was displeased. That was clearly a tactic used to coax young children. What do you want then? Lu Ye's gaze went down, starting at her plump red lips. A look of panic emerged in Hua Xi's eyes and her breathing hitched for a moment. Soon, however, she put on an uncaring expression and met Lu Ye's gaze with a smile, her beautiful eyes as dazzling as the stars in the sky. Time passed bit by bit, and the two remained in this position without moving. It was only after a while that Lu Yi let go of her. Hua Xi leapt back and taunted out of habit, "Scaredy cat! Get over here!" Lu Yi bellowed. "In your dreams!" Hua Xi giggled and ran even further away. The soft singing voice emerged again. Hua Xi was clearly in a better mood than before, and it wasn't long before the courtyard was filled with the smell of food. Chapter 548, Good Times Have Come. Soon, Lu Yi was scarfing down food in the courtyard while the smoke coming out of the tree of glyphs grew even stronger. It seemed like he would have to replenish the fuel again once he was back. Hua Si sat right across from him, sending food to his bowl from time to time while saying, "It's easy to be blinded by the complexities of the world. You should eat more to nurture yourself." Lu Yi pretended not to have heard her. "Where's E and Amber? I don't see them around." "They've returned to the outpost." Lu Yi took down 2 storage bags from his belt as he spoke, casually tossing them to the table. Hua Si picked them up, and when she saw the contents inside, she was surprised. "There's so much in here. Which sect did you rob this time?" Each storage bag was filled with the resources sent over by first-tier sects, and the 2 storage bags were worth a whopping 600,000 contribution points in goods. Of course, if these things were to be sold to the Vault of Providence, the value would be cut down slightly. Lu Yi drew a circle in the air. "All of the core circle sects. Not one of them escaped me this time." Hua Si didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "What did they do to you?" "It's a long story, let's not talk about that." Naturally, there was no need to tell Hua Si about how he was chased in the Carnage Coliseum and was forced to use the golden body token in the end, then having to summon a divine opportunity column before he could escape successfully. It would just make her worry for nothing. "I can't use these for my cultivation." "If you can't use it, just sell it and get some contribution points out of it. Contribution points will be useful once you reach the Cloud River battlefield." Hua Si thought about it and nodded. "Very well. I'll accept it." "What's with that pool of poison?" Lu Yi casually asked. "It's the poison spring of the Myriad Poison Forest. I found it by chance and drew it over there. That way, cultivating will be much more effective than just refining the fog." It was exactly her ability to refine the energy in the pool that caused the Myriad Poison Forest to shrink in such a short amount of time. The changes happening in the forest had already attracted the attention of many. Only, nobody could figure out what was going on. After all, in the Spirit Creek realm, the only person who could enter and leave the forest's depths unharmed was Lu Yi. Lu Yi was curious. "You've already reached Heaven 9, so how are you going to keep cultivating?" Heaven 9 was the peak of the Spirit Creek realm. Once one reached this level, then there was no way to keep on cultivating unless one advanced into the Cloud River realm. "I have my ways." Hua Si smiled. "Are you planning to refine the entire poison spring before moving on to the Cloud River realm?" "Of course. It's rare to have such a cultivation environment, so of course I'm going to make good use of it. Is there a similar place as this in the Cloud River battlefield?" "I haven't found one, but I'll take note of it for you once I return." Mutant cores of spirit beasts will also work. Some of their cores are highly toxic. The Vault of Providence should have something like that. Once you advance into the Cloud River realm, you can go and buy some yourself. I'll also keep an eye out for you. Then he suddenly thought of something. "Have you reached the role of supremacy yet?" Hua Si then shot him a playful wink. "I've occupied the top of the role of supremacy for a few months now. Didn't you know?" Lu Yi was stunned. "The top of the role of supremacy? Don't you look down on me?" Hua Si wagged her fingers at him. Hua Si had the strength to make an impact on the role of supremacy that Lu Yi was sure of. Back then, she had killed many thousand Demon Ridge cultivators in the Myriad Poison Forest, but to say that she could occupy the top spot for months in a row was still more or less a surprise to him. But naturally, Hua Si wouldn't joke about such a thing to him. First, there was the Crimson Blood Sect's Yi who ruled the role of supremacy for several months, and now there was the Crimson Blood Sect's Hua Si taking the top spot. And from how things were going, it seemed she would continue to dominate the rankings for a long time to come. Especially since Hua Si was still publicly known as a medical cultivator. Lu Yi was curious to know what the mood of those Heaven 9 cultivators on the role of supremacy was like nowadays. Since ancient times, medical cultivators were rarely able to make it within the top 50 of the role of supremacy, but then there was Hua Si, who occupied the topmost position. On second thought, however, Hua Si may be a medical cultivator, but after gaining her complete inheritance, she was no longer the same as the other regular medical cultivators. Most such cultivators would also cultivate the way of spells or some other school for the sake of self-preservation, but Hua Si did not adopt any of them. Strictly speaking, she was now a poisoneer. Medicine and poison have always been of one category, and as a poisoneer, Hua Si was different from the general poisoneer. If she willed it, then she could even emit poison from her breath, not to mention transmitting venom through touch. With this sort of heritage, occupying the top spot of the role of supremacy should naturally be no issue for her. The 1,000 Demon Ridge cultivators who challenged her would often not be able to see her before their minds were stirred up by her poison and forced to admit defeat or flee. After that happened a few times, nobody dared to challenge Hua Si for her position anymore. What the 1,000 Demon Ridge wanted to know was where this Crimson Blood Sect's medical cultivator was hiding, since no one had seen her in the Spirit Creek battlefield. She never even appeared in the outposts of any sect before. To the 1,000 Demon Ridge, Lu Yi was a nightmare, but at the very least he would show himself outside and stir up some wind and rain. However, Hua Si was like a riddle without an answer. In the entirety of the Spirit Creek battlefield, in the recent year or so, Bingzhou's Crimson Blood Sect was simply like a mountain weighing down on the heads of the 1,000 Demon Ridge's cultivators, so heavy that it made it hard for them to breathe. After having his fill of food and drink, Lu Yi stretched his back with a comfy look on his face. While cleaning up the dishes, Hua Si asked, "Are you leaving now?" You should come to the Cloud River battlefield soon too. I'll be waiting for you there." "I will. By the way, do you have more of the omnipoison pill you gave me last time?" Those pills could play a very strong role in specific environments. For example, in the Myriad Beast domain. If Lu Yi hadn't sacrificed the omnipoison pill then, he wouldn't have been able to deal with that Niu Meng. Even though that pill was a double-edged sword, if used well, it can also play a role in turning the tides in a desperate situation. "I do." While saying so, Hua Si reached into her dress and pulled out a handful of green omnipoison pills that were still warm with her body heat. Lu Ye's eyes twitched at that. Looking at the dozen of omnipoison pills, he didn't stand on ceremony and took 3 from the pile, storing them inside his storage sphere. "Take more." "I can always make more," Hua Si insisted. "No need. These are enough for self-defense." He didn't know what it cost Hua Si to make these omnipoison pills, but he was sure that they didn't come easy, so he naturally couldn't squander it. "I'm going now." Lu Yi turned around and waved to her before bringing out his spirit boat. Upon stepping on it and pouring his spiritual power into it, it took to the skies. Hua Si stood in place, watching him go, raising her hands around her mouth and shouting, "Be careful out there, my child's father." Lu Yi stumbled and almost fell off his spirit boat. He looked down and glared at Hua Si, only to see her giggling sweetly like blossoming flowers. After watching Lu Ye's figure disappear into the distance, Hua Si also stretched her back, accentuating her beautiful and graceful figure. She was going to be alone again, but in these recent months, she had gotten used to such a life, so she didn't feel that lonely. Still, she had to work hard on cultivating and strive to refine the poison spring entirely so that she could join him on the Cloud River battlefield soon. She was still a medical cultivator at the very least and could help him heal his injuries as she followed him around. Through the clear blue sky and picturesque scenery, Lu Yi hurried on his way. The calm journey led him out of the core circle, into the inner circle, then to the outer circle before he finally made it to his outpost. In fact, he could have used the Divine Opportunity column of the Divine Trade Association nearby to teleport straight back to the outpost after leaving the Myriad Poison Forest, but that would also cost a good amount of contribution points. It wasn't that he had anything to do recently anyway, and he couldn't enter the Cloud River battlefield either, so there was no need to waste money. In 3 days, Lu Yi arrived at the Crimson Blood Sect's outpost, and as soon as he entered the Grand Defensive Ward, he heard the clear voice of an eagle ring out. Raising his head to look at the spirit peak nearby, he saw a familiar figure standing there, staring at him. Beaky had returned. Lu Yi got on his spirit artifact and flew towards the spirit peak and arrived at the eagle's nest, feeding the fish that he had caught from Lunarmere to Biki before playing with it for a while. Then he entered the Sanctum of Providence. An endless stream of disciples saluted him on the way. There were those from the Crimson Blood sect itself, as well as those from outside sects who had come to train. There were even female cultivators with hot personalities that would take the initiative to come up and make small talk with him, looks of reverence clear in their eyes. After dismissing those cultivators, Lu Yi stood in front of the Divine Opportunity column and pressed his hand on it. Then he connected his consciousness to the Vault of Providence. He had to sell some things to the Vault of Providence. Only then could he ensure that he would have enough contribution points for his use. This time, he had received a total of 20 to 30 million worth of resources, so even if he sold them all to the Vault of Providence and took the sale loss, he would still be able to pocket more than 10,000 million contribution points. Naturally, however, Lu Yi wouldn't sell everything. As long as he had enough contribution points for his own temporary use, then that was enough. The rest would be better off handed over to his second senior sister to ensure the smooth development and operation of the sect. Especially as his second senior sister was now in the Divine Ocean realm, her cultivation needs were quite hefty. Cultivators in the Spirit Creek realm could cultivate in the Spirit Creek battlefield, but as they reached the Cloud River realm and arrived at the Cloud River battlefield, there was no specific battlefield to head to after advancing into the Real Lake realm. Lu Yi wasn't particularly sure how the Real Lake realm and Divine Ocean realm masters were supposed to cultivate, but it was said to be related to a clan's heritage. The stronger the clan's heritage, the faster the Real Lake realm and Divine Ocean realm masters could advance. So, in the entirety of Jianghu, the powerful sects kept on pumping out strong experts, whereas the weaker sects could only slowly accumulate strength and develop, just waiting for the day that they could leap over the Dragon's Gate. With Shui Yuan's talent, she had, in fact, long been qualified to advance to the Divine Sea realm, but until half a year ago, she was still in the Ninth Order Real Lake realm. It wasn't that she wasn't qualified to advance, but it was due to the Crimson Blood sect's pitiful condition that they did not have enough resources to support her in her cultivation. However, with the rise of Lu Yi, the good days had finally come for the Crimson Blood sect. When Lu Yi put together a Grand Sky Coalition army in the Inner Circle and conquered all the four corners of the realm, he forced the Thousand Demon Ridge to bend to his will and sent out a great offering of resources in order to calm the situation down. Chapter 549, Spirit Storage Ring. That batch of resources was split between the Grand Sky Coalition's many sects, but as Lu Yi was the one to be credited for this effort, the Crimson Blood sect occupied most of it. And it was thanks to that batch of resources that Shui Yuan could fully step into the Divine Ocean realm. They were focused on developing the sect at the time, so Shui Yuan didn't dare to use up too much of the resources. However, as Lu Yi spread across the core circle, extorting all the Thousand Demon Ridge's core circle sects for resources worth 20 to 30 millions of contribution points worth of resources, Shui Yuan wasn't as restricted in the resources that she could take. It was foreseeable that with another batch of resources entering their storage, Shui Yuan's cultivation would only increase in the future. After all, in the whole of the Crimson Blood sect, she and the sect master were the only two Divine Ocean realm masters, and the sect master no longer needed to cultivate. If Shui Yuan were willing, she could pour the resources of her entire sect onto herself, an advantage that no Divine Ocean realm master could ever hope to match. Lu Yi was only in the Cloud River realm at this time, so he didn't have to worry too much about future matters. After all, it wouldn't be too late to wait until he advanced into the Real Lake realm before dealing with it. Inside the Vault of Providence, Lu Yi dug through his storage sphere and sold some resources that he and his sect weren't in need of fire now, and he saw his contribution points being raised at a visibly fast rate. It wasn't until he was close to the 300,000 contribution points mark that he finally stopped. This much was more than enough for his own use. Even if he encountered some overwhelming danger in the future, he could summon a Divine Opportunity column to escape. Still, it wasn't a guarantee to be able to escape just because he could summon a Divine Opportunity column. He had the protection of the Golden Body Token when he was in the Carnage Coliseum, and that was the reason why all those Thousand Demon Ridge cultivators failed to do anything to him. Without it, even if he did manage to summon a divine opportunity column, he might not have been able to reach it. So, that method could only be used when he could ensure that he had enough time and space to pull it off. Then, Lu Yi bought some flames of earthen spirits and swallowed them up piece by piece. He had to hurry and replenish the Tree of Glyphs fuel stock. He had only known previously that the Tree of Glyphs could burn toxins, but it was only now that he realized that the Tree of Glyphs could even burn the judgment of the heavens inside of him, so there was no saying what else it could burn in the future, and thus it was only natural that he should put more care into refueling it. Time passed, and one by one, the flames of earthen spirits were consumed. To Lu Ye's surprise, the leaves on the Tree of Glyphs didn't react at all. It wasn't until he swallowed nearly 200 flames of earthen spirits that one of the leaves on the Tree of Glyphs showed any signs that it was beginning to burn. Lu Yi guessed that his encounter this time had caused a crisis in the Tree of Glyphs, and so the flames of earthen spirits he had consumed before had all been turned into fuel. It was only when he felt that his reserves were almost full that he began to see changes in the leaves. It had been a long time since he had gotten any new glyphs from the tree, so Lu Yi was naturally curious about what sort of glyphs he would get next. So, he continued buying flames of earthen spirits and devoured all of them. After buying almost 100 more pieces, Lu Yi was surprised to find that there were no more for him to buy. This surprised him as it turned out that the stock of flames of earthen spirits in the Vault of Providence actually had a limit. He always thought that the goods in the Vault of Providence never ran out. But come to think of it, he had simply taken it for granted. The things in the Vault of Providence did not come out of thin air. All of the treasures sold inside had to have come from somewhere. The most widely rumored theory was that the contents in the Vault of Providence were related to the Divine Trade Association. That was because someone had once sold something to the Divine Trade Association, only to find traces of it appearing in the Vault of Providence. In that case, the flames of earthen spirits should also have been collected by cultivators from somewhere before being sold to the Vault of Providence. Lu Yi wasn't sure where these flames could be collected. The ones who used them either refined pills or spirit artifacts, so the purchase amount would not be too large, thus there was always a large stock available. But when it came to him, he would buy several dozen to hundreds of these flames at a time. Even more outrageously, he had bought a few hundred this time and completely dried up the stock in the vault. If flames of earthen spirits were out, there should still be other flames. Lu Yi searched the Vault of Providence for more of what he needed. A few moments later, many things related to flames appeared in his field of vision. However, each item was different, and most of the ones that appeared were core flames. Core flames were not used for refining pills. Instead, they were the mutant cores of fire attribute spirit beasts, and each core was just like a ball of flames. The prices were also different for each one. The cheapest one started at 500 to 600, but there were also those that cost up to tens of thousands. Among them, Lu Yi also noticed one that was called Paramount Glacial Flame, which should be a type of mystic flame. Just looking at it gave one a chilling feeling, and the flame even had a ghostly blue color. This thing was also ridiculously expensive at 180,000 contribution points. He couldn't help but think of the true phoenix flame he had gotten in the Burning Lands. If this thing was put into the Vault of Providence, then it would surely fetch a hefty price as well. Perhaps, its price may even be higher than this Paramount Glacial Flame. Since it was Lu Yi who got his hands on it, he would only use it for the consumption of the Tree of Glyphs, but others could use these flames to cultivate some special secret arts, and thus the value was naturally not the same as the rest. Devouring the true phoenix flame added glyph, fire phoenix to the Tree of Glyphs, so Lu Yi was curious to know what sort of changes the Tree of Glyphs would show if he were to devour the Paramount Glacial Flame. However, the price of 180,000 contribution points was enough to dissuade him from that thought. Even if he had the capital to afford it, he still decided to give up on it after some thought. He couldn't expect to get some sort of glacial glyph by consuming this Paramount Glacial Flame. After all, such a glyph didn't exist in the world, and if he didn't get a corresponding glyph from it and simply used it as fuel, it would not be cost-effective. Lu Yi didn't stop until he bought up all of the flames that cost less than 1,000 contribution points. The total damage racked up to nearly 300,000 contribution points. To have spent so much at once, money truly did go as quickly as it came. And this was only the Cloud River realm. Once he arrived at the real Lake realm or the Divine Ocean realm, he would really need to spend a lot of contribution points. Talent and qualifications were certainly important in the path of cultivation, but without sufficient financial support, it would still be difficult for one to raise their cultivation level quickly. The Tree of Glyphs was still devouring the flames, but Lu Yi was prepared to save some as spares in case he encountered a situation where the Tree of Glyphs ran out of fuel again. Immersing his mind, he saw the leaves on the Tree of Glyphs burning up one by one as the flames were consumed. Lu Yi couldn't help but be excited about what he would get. Compared to the glyphs that he learned from books, he could use the ones from the Tree of Glyphs at will, which often came with the possibility of increasing his strength in some way. He continued searching through the Vault of Providence. Next, he had to find spirit artifacts that could store spiritual power. He had used Glyph, Fire Phoenix twice, and he remembered both experiences vividly in his mind. He had to say that though this glyph could set the tune with one beat of the gong at times, the price he had to pay in order to use this glyph was also great. The after effects he could recuperate from as long as he had a safe place to rest afterwards. However, the spiritual power that was needed to support this glyph was terrifying, and that was a problem that had to be dealt with. He'd used Glyph, Spirit Storage to complete the construction of this glyph, but if he had a spirit artifact that could do the job, then it wouldn't have to be as troublesome. He could simply store spiritual power into the spirit artifact beforehand, then use it when he needed it. All varieties of treasures could be found in the Vault of Providence, so there should be no shortage of the spirit artifact he needed. Sure enough, hundreds of spirit artifacts appeared in Lu Ye's vision after a moment. Even though they were all of different quality, the price differed as well. They were even in different shapes and sizes. After browsing through them, Lu Yi finally settled on a ring. A ring was easy to wear and not easy to lose. Moreover, it was of good quality equivalent to a top-grade spirit artifact. Within the realm of spirit artifacts, the quality of a spirit artifact was determined by how many restraining locks were built into it. Below 9 restraining locks meant it was a low-grade spirit artifact. 9 to 18 signified middle grade. 18 to 27 were high grade, and 27 to 36 were top grade. As the quality differed, the price naturally changed as well. Generally, top grade spirit artifacts cost between 1,500 and 2,000 contribution points in the Vault of Providence, but the difference was not too great. From Lu Ye's perspective, a mere 1,000 to 2,000 contribution points were naturally nothing. He could simply spend it without worry. However, for most Cloud River realm cultivators, even a few thousand was a lot, especially since each cultivator needed more than one spirit artifact. Spirit artifacts had to be constantly replaced as their level of cultivation increased. So, cultivators tended to spend a lot of contribution points on their spirit artifacts. Of course, it was possible to purchase them using spirit stones from the Divine Trade Association, but one had to first have enough of them in order to make the purchase. When it really came down to it, however, purchasing goods using spirit stones would actually be more expensive than spending contribution points. The spirit storage ring that Lu Yi chose was slightly ridiculous, costing a whopping 4,000 contribution points. For one, spirit bank artifacts were special and not weapons for cultivators to fight with. Such spirit artifacts generally cost more than the usual spirit artifact since their numbers were limited. Secondly, this was the smallest of the spirit bank spirit artifacts, and also the most portable, so it was naturally more expensive. With the spirit storage ring now in his possession, Lu Yi put it on his finger and found it to be very suitable. It didn't affect his blade swings either, and it had the ability of absorbing and storing the spiritual power that usually drifted out from the surface of a cultivator's body. So, even if Lu Yi didn't actively pour spiritual power into it, as long as he wore it for a long enough period of time, it would be able to store a sufficient amount. When Lu Yi needed it, it was much more efficient for him to extract spiritual power straight from the ring rather than using spirit pills to recover his power. He had bought all that he needed to buy and sold all that needed to be sold. Then, Lu Yi checked his battlefield imprint. The contribution column read, 193,643 contribution points. Now it was time for the main event, the reward from the Carnage Coliseum's roster of Carnage. Since returning from the Carnage Coliseum, Lu Yi hadn't bothered to deal with the reward. Instead, he headed straight into the Spirit Creek battlefield as soon as he recovered. Now, he finally had the time to check it. When the Carnage Coliseum closed back then, the heavens engraved a golden mark on the back of his hand. Through that mark, Lu Yi could link with the Vault of Providence from any Divine Opportunity column and retrieve his reward there. Chapter 550 New Glyphs. The first place reward of the roster of Carnage was what Lu Yi had been looking forward to the most. After all, it was a reward that could directly aid him in cultivation. For the current him, nothing was more important than that. Inside the Vault of Providence, Lu Yi immersed his consciousness and connected it with the golden mark on the back of his hand. Then, his vision blurred, and he appeared inside of a secret room. The room wasn't very large, and there was a table at the very center of it. There were only 2 chests placed on the table, one big and one small, looking extremely simple. On each chest was a golden mark, which was the same mark that the heavens left on the back of Lu Ye's hand. The mark just looked like a golden octagonal disc with nothing special about it. Walking forward, he opened up the larger chest, and all of a sudden, the room was filled with a dazzling golden light. Lu Yi waited for the light to subside before looking into the chest. There, several golden amulets entered his vision. He took them out one by one, and there were exactly 9 of them in total. Counting the 2 golden amulets that he had, now he had a total of 11 of them with this addition. He still had amulets of other qualities as well. For a 3rd order Cloud River Realm cultivator to have so many amulets was simply unheard of. Since ancient times, no single cultivator from Jianghu had ever been in possession of so many amulets at once and at such a low cultivation level. If it wasn't for the rewards from the roster of Carnage, Lu Yi wouldn't have been able to achieve such a feat either. Mainly, it was the glyph, Fire Phoenix he used at the end that killed a large number of the 1,000 Demon Ridges cultivators, allowing him to ascend into the top position of the roster of Carnage. With so many amulets in hand, Lu Yi estimated that if he were to use all of them, it wouldn't be too hard for him to reach the 5th order Cloud River Realm. Of course, not all of these 9 golden amulets belonged to him. He still had to split them with Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan later, so he could only have 3 of them. After putting the amulets away, Lu Yi looked to the smaller chest. The large chest contained the golden amulets, so the small chest should contain the legendary Primus-level Wisp of Sanctification. Even though Lu Yi had a Tertius-level arcane glade at some point, he had never seen what the Wisp of Sanctification actually looked like. He raised his hand to open the small chest, but nothing unusual happened. When he looked down, however, a frown formed on his brow. There in the chest lay a white and chubby thing like a chrysalis. It was the length of a palm and seemed to be alive, and that was because Lu Yi could sense that it was breathing, and following its breaths, its body appeared solid at times and illusory at others. So this is a Primus-level Wisp of Sanctification? It was not what he expected, but since it was a gift from the heavens, it had to be real. It was said that if one possessed this thing, then no matter where one was in the Cloud River battlefield, one could use it to create a Primus-level Spirit Spout, which in turn gave birth to a Primus-level Arcane Glade. However, it was only limited to the Cloud River battlefield. For a Spirit Spout to give rise to an Arcane Glade was something unique to the Cloud River battlefield, and such a thing did not exist anywhere else. So, the Wisp of Sanctification could only work in the Cloud River battlefield. Lu Yi grabbed the fat white Wisp of Sanctification, which felt unexpectedly nice in his hand. But how should he store this thing? It seemed to be a living thing, so he wondered whether anything would go wrong if he were to just keep it in his storage bag. After some thought, Lu Yi looked at the small chest in front of him and put the Wisp of Sanctification back before picking up the chest. This chest was also a gift from the heavens. Though he had no idea what material was used to make it, it had to be good stuff, so he brought it along with him. Maybe he could use it to store something else in the future. To his surprise, No matter how much strength he used, he couldn't get the chest to budge. When he tried to move the larger chest next to it, it was the same. The chest couldn't be taken away. Wasn't this too stingy of the heavens? Left with no other choice, Lu Yi took out a spirit beast bag and put the wisp of sanctification into it. Storage bags couldn't contain living things, but it was no problem for the spirit beast bag. After collecting the wards from the roster of carnage, Lu Yi moved his mind and left the Vault of Providence. When he came back to his senses, he stood before the Divine Opportunity column with disciples surrounding him, all of them bowing when they saw him open his eyes. Lu Yi responded to their greetings and gave them a few words of encouragement before returning back to the Crimson Blood sect through the Divine Opportunity column. Upon sensing Lu Ye's return, Amber scurried in from the outside and nudged him with its large head. "Where's Yi?" Lu Yi asked. Amber raised its head and gestured in a direction, which told Lu Yi that he was cultivating with the sect master. He was a spell cultivator, and so was the sect master, so it naturally made it easy for her to receive guidance from him. Compared to Lu Yi, he was more like the sect master's final disciple. Rather than disturb them, Lu Yi went straight towards Shui Yuan's residence. When he found Shui Yuan, he took out all the materials he brought from outside, which Shui Yuan was so shocked to see that she could hardly speak. Again? So many? The scene in front of her seemed familiar. Just a few months ago, Lu Yi had brought in such a huge amount of supplies, but she didn't think that he would bring another batch back in just a short few months. When Lu Yi entered the Spirit Creek battlefield, he said that he was going to get revenge. But now, rather than revenge, it seemed more like he was going to stock up on resources. She wondered just how the Thousand Demon Ridge was feeling after being extorted by the same guy twice. "Senior sister, things will get better and better for us in the future, so no need to be stingy with your cultivation needs. You and Sect Master are the only two Divine Ocean Realm Masters in the sect, and the Sect Master is growing old, so there are things that he can no longer keep up with. In the future, you'll have to watch after the sect more." Shui Yuan nodded. "I understand. Instead of me, you've worked hard out there." Even though she had no idea what Lu Yi had done to make the Thousand Demon Ridge compromise, if she didn't guess wrong, then some fights and killings had to be involved. Otherwise, unless such a large faction was forced to a point of desperation, how could they possibly be willing to compromise? "Take your time organizing the resources, senior sister. I'll be taking my leave." Saying so, Lu Yi took out his spirit artifact and took to the skies, flying towards the summit of bamboos. Looking at the mountain of resources in front of her, Shui Yuan laughed and shook her head. It was going to be another busy but fulfilling day, and the sect's storage was going to be filled to the point of overflowing. In the sleeping chambers of the summit of bamboos, Lu Yi divided the amulets in his hands into two sets. One set with 6 golden amulets was for Li Baxian and Feng Yuechen. There was another set of 5 golden amulets, 1 purple one, a blue one, 2 green ones, as well as 4 white ones. Other than the golden amulets, most of these came to him as spoils of war from when he slaughtered his enemies in the Carnage Colosseum, but there were also those he got from opening amulet caskets. He didn't rush to use these amulets, however, since Yi was not around. Once Yi was free, they could cultivate together to increase their strength. He continued taking out various flames for the Tree of Glyphs consumption, and as time passed, the leaves on the Tree of Glyphs burned one by one. Lu Yi didn't stop until only 30 flames of earthen spirits were left in his possession. He had to keep some behind for unexpected situations, just in case the Tree of Glyphs ever ran out of fuel again. Then he began checking the glyphs on the leaves. As before, most of the leaves did not carry complete glyphs, but rather special connection techniques that were very useful to Lu Yi. They could be considered the basis and foundation for his advancement in the way of glyphs. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to master the construction of glyphs without knowing how to connect them. Glyphs could be used alone or with the help of wards. If a glyph were activated through a ward, then these connection techniques will have to be used. Strictly speaking, glyphs and wards were complementary to each other. It took Lu Yi almost 3 hours to finish inspecting all the burning leaves. There were 4 new glyphs in total. Moreover, Each glyph was more complex than the previous ones as they were carried on not just a single leaf. For example, Lu Ye's first glyphs, Protection and Sharp Edge, were both basic glyphs that were not complicated to construct. A single leaf was enough to carry all their information. However, there were some complicated glyphs that couldn't be contained in just one leaf. For example, glyph, Space was carried by several dozen leaves, and glyph, Fire Phoenix, was even more ridiculous. The outline of the leaves that carried it looked just like a fire phoenix crouching on the tree of glyphs when linked together. The more difficult the glyphs, the more leaves it had to be carried on. This time, he had received 3 types of glyphs, split into leaves as few as 3 or 4 to as many as 7 to 8. This meant that these were much more difficult to construct than basic glyphs like Protection and Sharp Edge. Trap Beast, Mist Shroud, Mirage, Aerial Lock. These were the 4 new glyphs he obtained. Lu Yi had seen every type of these glyphs in books before. Of them, he had used glyph, Trapped Beast in the Carnage Coliseum before. Other than glyph, Void, this was another practical glyph that he learned from a book that was used during fights. The trap ward he set up before was based with glyph, Trapped Beast at its core. In the Carnage Coliseum, he was able to escape the pursuit twice from 9th Order Cloud River Realm experts, so the role that this glyph played was self-evident. However, that was something that he learned from a book. Compared to that which was inspired by the Tree of Glyphs, it was different for Lu Yi. The glyphs he taught himself carried a risk of failure and were not very efficient, but the glyphs on the Tree of Glyphs could be activated at will, and setting up a trap ward with such a glyph would also be more efficient. Glyph, Mist Shroud, was as its name suggested. It could create a shroud of mist, and the more energy that was poured into it, the denser the mist. This glyph was used specifically for wards. A confusion ward was set up finely enough and supplemented by other techniques, then it could be used to effectively confuse an enemy. Glyph, Mirage, was similar to glyph, Mist Shroud, but rather than create mist, it created an illusion to confuse reality and falsehood. Similarly, this glyph can also be used as the core of a ward to set up a Mirage ward. If Mist Shroud and Mirage were to be combined, then it would truly become a proper illusion ward. As for Aerial Lock, it was also as its name suggested. It had the ability to prohibit flight in the air, and if used as the core of a ward, it would become an aerial lock ward. These 4 glyphs didn't improve Lu Ye's own strength much, but it offered him more choices in the way of wards. Lu Yi couldn't help but get a strange feeling rising up in him. He had gained 4 glyphs from the Tree of Glyphs last time, but he ended up going farther and farther down the path of a spell cultivator. This time, with the 4 new glyphs he received, he was going farther and farther down the path of a ward cultivator. He wondered what else he would get next time. Chapter 551, Way of Tattoos. After leaving the Summit of Bamboos, he headed straight for the Summit of Clarity. He hadn't visited Lady Yun during this trip back to the sect, and it was also time for him to swap the old books for new ones. He had looked through the books he got from her plenty of times and knew each one like the back of his hand. The Summit of Clarity was as peaceful as always. Even though there were also some disciples in the Crimson Blood sect who could choose to freely enter and leave the sect and its outpost, no one dared tread on the Summit of Clarity lightly, and Lu Yi was the only one who could come at will without prior notice. When he reached the Summit of Clarity, he was brought before Lady Yun by her mute maid. Lu Yi bowed respectfully in greeting. He was very reverent of Lady Yun, and though his entry into the Way of Wards could be said to be due to his possession of the Tree of Glyphs, strictly speaking, Lady Yun was truly the one who led the way forward for him in this path. Though the two were not master and disciple by name, that relationship was their truth. Lady Yun was undoubtedly very pleased with Lu Ye's sense and talent as well, and she even had the idea to take Lu Yi in as her disciple in the past, but that never came to be for various reasons. Even so, Lady Yun never held anything back when it came to teaching Lu Yi, showing no reservation as a true master would to their disciple. Inside the hall, Lady Yun tested Lu Ye's recent progress in the Way of Glyphs as usual while Lu Yi answered each of her questions and demonstrated his proficiency. Despite receiving no praise from Lady Yun, Lu Yi could tell just from the look in her eyes that she was very satisfied with his growth in the way of wards. Then, Lady Yun constructed a complex glyph so that he may try to dispel it, which Lu Yi completed without a hitch. This game where Lu Yi destroyed the glyphs that Lady Yun constructed was a fast way for glyph weavers to learn the structure of certain glyphs. In Lady Yun's words, glyph weavers who could construct glyphs were only drawing a scoop according to the gourd. Only by understanding how to quickly break a particular glyph could one truly attain mastery over that glyph. After the test was over, Lady Yun smiled. You are now qualified to be considered a true glyph weaver. However, humility gains and fullness loses. Remember not to be complacent. Yes, Lu Yi answered respectfully. After some thought, he added, this disciple wishes to learn the way of tattoos from the lady. Oh! Lady Yun was surprised at that. What suddenly spurred you to want to learn tattooing? You have some proficiency in the way of wards, so why not further your attainments in that path instead? Lu Yi answered, naturally, this disciple has no intention of abandoning the way of wards, but besides that, this disciple also wishes to delve into the way of tattoos. Right now, the sect is developing, but it is still young and the disciples are weak. In the future, when they venture out of the Spirit Creek battlefield and into the Cloud River battlefield, they will eventually bump shoulders with others and get into fights. If this disciple can learn the way of tattoos, I can also help tattoo them with glyphs that would provide some help to them. Lady Yun couldn't help but laugh at that. These should be matters that old fart should be mulling over. You need only focus on your own cultivation. Naturally, the old fart was referring to the sect master. Lu Yi insisted, this disciple also wishes to help. Moreover, it doesn't hurt to learn more skills, and even if understanding more things doesn't necessarily bring about any benefits, it couldn't be a bad thing to know more. Lady Yun nodded with a smile. Since you have the heart to learn, then learn you shall. Tattoo artistry is a branch from the art of glyph weaving. Since you have tattoos yourself, you should know what they are. Lu Yi nodded. However, having the ability to construct a glyph doesn't give you the ability to tattoo that glyph on a person's body. It requires fine techniques and control over one's spiritual power. Furthermore, you'll need the help of special materials that are not limited to the blood of various beasts, herbs, and so on. Oftentimes, the materials required for each type of tattoo were also different. Since she agreed to guide Lu Yi in the way of tattoos, Lady Yun began imparting all kinds of knowledge regarding tattoos to Lu Yi. Even if he already knew all this information, Lu Yi still listened seriously. To receive guidance from a top glyph weaver like Lady Yun was a rare and precious opportunity for anyone. And through Lady Yun's teachings, Lu Yi gradually gained a systematic understanding of the way of tattoos. Only then did he realize that the way of tattoos was not as straightforward as he had expected. However, Lu Yi had a unique advantage when it came to his wish of cultivating the way of tattoos. That came in the form of spiritual power control and a powerful mind. No other cultivator at his level should be able to surpass him in these areas. Time gradually went by, and Lady Yun's earnest lecture lasted several hours before coming to an end, where she called out to Lu Yi. Come with me. Lu Yi got up and followed. Soon, the two of them arrived at a book storage room. Lady Yun swept her gaze around the room and with a casual gesture, books of varying thicknesses flew off the shelves. There were about a dozen or so books in total, which she placed in front of Lu Yi. These are the works of different tattoo artists, each offering their fundamental insights into the way of tattoos. Take your time to look through them, and I will teach you more tomorrow. Yes. For Lu Yi, reading was not a chore. Ever since he began practicing the way of glyphs with Lady Yun, he had perused at least hundreds of books on the subject. In the Spirit Creek battlefield and the Cloud River battlefield, as long as he had some free time, he enjoyed studying, and it had become something of a habit for him. Opening one of the books, Lu Yi earnestly read through its contents. Lady Yun had already left. After one whole night, Lu Yi managed to finish the dozen or so books. These works were not exceedingly profound, so they were ready to read, and he also gained valuable insights from them. The next day, Lady Yun went straight to the book storage and continued instructing Lu Yi more on the way of tattoos. The same pattern repeated itself. In the morning, Lady Yun provided Lu Yi with lessons. At night, Lu Yi would immerse himself in reading within the room, days passing by uneventfully. 10 days later, after assessing Lu Ye's theoretical knowledge of the way of tattoos, Lady Yun nodded with satisfaction. You've grasped the fundamentals of the way of tattoos quite well. Now, what's left is the practical application. The way of tattoos is all about practice, and it also carries significant risks. This aspect sets it apart from other branches of glyph mastery. Nevertheless, tattooing required leaving a mark on a living being to be effective. If a tattoo artist's technique was not proficient enough, or their skill lacked precision, then a failed tattoo could be a minor concern or even cause irreversible harm to the recipient. If that were the case, then it would be troublesome. Before you begin your practicals, you need your own set of tools. Saying so, Lady Yun extended her hand, and a jade box appeared in her palm, which she pushed in front of Lu Yi. This is a set of needles I used in my earlier years. It's been idle for many years, so I'm giving it to you today. Lu Yi respectfully accepted it. Thank you, madam. This gift was of great help to him. Without Lady Yun's gift, he would have had to find a set of needles himself. Perhaps the Vault of Providence might have some for sale, but it would likely cost a significant amount of contributions, and the quality wouldn't compare to the set that Lady Yun had given him. Upon opening the jade box, Lu Yi found it neatly arranged with 49 needles of varying lengths. He picked up one and noticed it was hollow, designed for injecting materials like a concoction of beast blood and herbs. Furthermore, these needles varied not only in length but also in hardness. Some were incredibly rigid, while others were extremely flexible. Each needle had its purpose. When tattoo artists engraved a glyph, multiple needles with different properties were often needed to complete the process. Initially, while practicing tattoos, you should choose simpler glyphs. Through continuous practice, you will become familiar with the techniques, and once your skills are refined, you can move on to more complex tattoos. Understood, Lu Yi responded, but he was curious. But, madam, what should I use to practice? Lady Yun gave him a knowing smile. There is only one initial practice subject for a tattoo artist, and that is yourself, of course. Lu Ye's eyelid twitched slightly. He had thought of using some wild beasts or spirit beasts for practice. It's only through working on your own body that you can accurately grasp the essence of tattoos and become better acquainted with the force behind the needles. After all, your body's feedback is the most authentic and clear. At the outset of your practice, don't aim to achieve greatness immediately and try to tattoo a full glyph directly. Instead, start from the basic elements of yin and yang, treating it as if you're learning the way of glyphs again from the beginning. Disciple understands. Smiling, Lady Yun raised her hand, and a jade bottle appeared before Lu Yi. This bottle contains a type of medicinal concoction that you can use for practice. Even if you fail, it won't harm you. After a short while, Lady Yun left. Lu Yi stared at the needles and the bottle before him and pondered for a moment. Then he rolled up his right sleeve to reveal his arm while picking up a needle with his left hand, dipping it into the medicinal concoction, and quickly and decisively pricked his right arm. The technique of needle insertion was already deeply ingrained in him. The process required speed, precision, and stability. At the moment of insertion, he had to inject the material contained in the needle into his body in order to form a primary element. Each needle could only form a single element, meaning the more intricate a glyph was, the more jabs were required. To control one's mental focus and spiritual power was undoubtedly a significant challenge. On the first needle prick, he failed, unsurprisingly. Activating spiritual power to construct yin and yang was relatively easy for Lu Yi, but constructing yin and yang with a needle was an entirely different level of difficulty. Lady Yun's suggestion to treat it as a new beginning in cultivating the way of glyph was not without merit. Lu Yi felt like a novice exploring glyphs for the first time, and he had to start from scratch in every aspect. The first time was a failure, the second time was a failure, then a third, a fourth. Little fine needle holes were constantly appearing on Lu Ye's right arm. Through the holes, a faint purple color could be seen, which was the color of the medicinal concoction. 2 hours later, as Lu Yi pricked the needle into his body, a complete primary element was finally constructed. He raised an eyebrow and immediately dipped the needle again to continue the next attempt. Chapter 552, Fourth Order Cloud River Realm. With constant practice, there was no longer skin on his right arm that had not been pricked by a needle, so Lu Yi moved to his thigh. Once those were also covered in holes, he moved to his abdomen. He had a strong body, so petty injuries like this would not affect him much. After just one night of rest, he could continue his practice again. Due to the purple concoction, however, his body was covered in a purple color. His skill grew little by little at a visible rate, allowing Lu Yi to tattoo more and more primary elements. In 2 days, he was able to tattoo glyph 9. This type of numbered glyph was the most simple type of glyph constructed with only 9 primary elements, but even though it was a glyph, it didn't serve any special function and was used by new glyph weavers to practice. Lu Yi had practiced these before, but this time he was practicing them again in the form of tattoos, so the difficulty was undoubtedly much greater than before. After a first successful experience, Lu Yi had undoubtedly gained a deeper understanding of the way of tattoos. As time passed, the glyphs that Lu Yi could tattoo became more and more complex, and he had to say that tattoos truly did drain the mind a great deal. Right now, the glyphs that he could tattoo were only the most basic ones. Glyphs such as void consisted of as many as 3,000 primary elements, which would equate to 3,000 jabs in total, during which he couldn't make any mistakes or pause in any way. He had to complete all 3,000 at one go, which would be difficult for one to hold on if their mental power was lacking. In the blink of an eye, inside the study several days later, following the last prick on his skin, a tattoo formed on Lu Ye's right arm. This tattoo was not a numerical glyph, but glyph, sharp edge, which he obtained from the tree of glyphs at the very beginning. The shape of the glyph was just like an arrow. Being able to tattoo a practical glyph such as this one was undoubtable proof that Lu Yi had made it past the threshold in the way of tattoos. Now, the only thing left to do was keep on practicing to accumulate experience. However, since the tattoo was made entirely out of a medicinal concoction, it was not powerful enough to exert strength. If a suitable mixture of animal blood and herbal juices were used, then it would truly become a real tattoo, and if spiritual power were poured into it, the glyph would be able to bring about a sharpening power. He breathed a long sigh of relief. It wasn't until this moment that Lu Yi finally felt a trace of fatigue. It had been more than half a month since he entered the Summit of Clarity, and he hadn't rested at all during this time. Even if he had a strong body, it was not strange for him to not be able to hold up any longer. It was time for him to bid farewell to Lady Yun. To a cultivator, enhancing one's cultivation realm was the most important thing for them. The way of glyphs was just an embellishment in the path of becoming stronger. Lu Yi had the talent and foundation, but he would not concentrate on the trifles and neglect the essentials simply because of this. He took out the books he had finished reading from his storage sphere and placed them back on the bookshelf. Then he looked for some books he hadn't read before and stored them away. Most of the books he chose this time were related to the way of tattoos. Since he had learnt the way of tattoos from Lady Yun, he would naturally make more effort on it in his spare time in the future. He walked out of the book room and left to see Lady Yun. Knowing the purpose of his visit, Lady Yun did not make him stay and only taught him a little more on the way of tattoos before letting him go. Lu Yi bowed and thanked her. After not seeing the sun for more than half a month, Lu Yi couldn't help but squint as the sunlight washed over him. Returning to the summit of bamboos, he took a bath before changing into a clean set of clothes. Then, Lu Yi fell into a deep sleep. After cultivating to the Cloud River realm, his need for sleep had become very low. When cultivators meditated, they were, in fact, in a state of semi-rest, and as long as the efficiency of their cultivation was high enough, they would come out of the session full of energy. However, it was human nature to eat and sleep. This was a truth that even the most advanced of cultivators could not erase. Lu Yi was eventually woken up by a wet tongue. When he opened his eyes, he saw Amber's head right in front of his face, its large tongue lapping happily at his face. After pushing it away, Lu Yi sat up. He had no idea how long he slept for, but the exhaustion had been cleared from his body, restoring him to a refreshed mood. Fragrance of freshly prepared food wafted in from the outside, and when Lu Yi walked out of curiosity, he found the table covered in rice and dishes that were still fresh and steaming. The door had been opened, and he walked in with another dish in hand. Upon seeing Lu Yi, she exclaimed in surprise, "Finally awake?" Lu Yi answered with a hum before sitting down at the table, grabbing a pair of chopsticks and digging in. He was surprised. "Did you make this?" He giggled. "It was second senior sister who made it, I just delivered them." He was wondering why the taste was completely the same as second senior sister's cooking. On second thought, he didn't even have this skill set to begin with. While eating, he chatted idly with Yi, and it didn't take long for Lu Yi to scarf down the table full of food. After eating his fill, he left Yi to clean up the table while he went out to exercise his body. After an hour, back in the hall, Lu Yi and Yi sat opposite each other while Amber sat between the two of them. "I'm starting now," Lu Yi said to her. Yi responded in excitement, "I'm ready." Lu Yi laughed and brought out his share of the amulets, then casually crushed one of the white ones. A white spiral emerged, from which pure spiritual power poured out in a dense, unscattered form, lingering around the two cultivators and the tiger. Just by breathing, they could take that energy into their bodies and use it to strengthen themselves. White amulets did not hold up for long, and it disappeared completely in less than an incense stick of time. Then Lu Yi picked up another. Once the white amulets were exhausted, he started on the green ones, and once those were done, he went into the blues, then the purples, before finally moving on to the 5 golden amulets. As the effects of the second golden amulet were about to deplete, Lu Yi distinctly felt the river of his spiritual power reaching a limit inside him, giving rise to that familiar sensation of fullness once again. This was the sign of a breakthrough. Previously, when he returned from the myriad beast domain, he had broken through into the third order and even moved slightly further beyond that. Later, he also obtained a purple amulet from Xia Qianqian. Coupled with days of consuming spirit pills, he was now not far from reaching the fourth order. Now, breaking through was just a natural progression. More power was being consumed and refined as it flowed into his body, enhancing the volume of his river of spiritual power. Until a certain moment, Lu Yi felt a surge in his river of spiritual power. Right after, that sense of fullness suddenly disappeared as if something had been shattered, replaced by an indescribable sense of contentment. A wave of energy surged in all directions. He had advanced into the fourth order Cloud River realm. In comparison to his previous advancement, going from the third order to the fourth order undoubtedly took longer, primarily due to the recent distractions. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been delayed this much. If he had possessed cultivation at the level of the fourth order Cloud River realm during his time at the Carnage Colosseum, then slaying the seventh order, He Bing would not have been so troublesome. However, Lu Yi was reluctant to use his amulets to enhance his strength in the Carnage Colosseum, as a single golden amulet could last for a full day and night. It would be a waste if he encountered enemies during that process. Almost simultaneous with his advancement into the fourth order Cloud River realm, Yi and Amber also experienced changes. A sudden flash of light emerged on the surface of Yi's body, and Amber's vitality surged for an instant. Clearly, they had also made a breakthrough. However, Yi was an apparition and Amber was a spirit beast, which made it difficult to define their progress by cultivation realms. Still, judging by the fluctuations in their spiritual power, they had undoubtedly entered the second order of the Cloud River realm. There were still 3 golden amulets remaining, so they continued cultivating. 3 days later, all the amulets had been consumed. None of them experienced another breakthrough during that period. Lu Yi was still in the fourth order, but after consuming 3 golden amulets, he had accumulated considerable progress within his new minor realm. As for Amber and Yi, they were on the brink of teaching the third order. With a bit more dedicated cultivation, they should be able to make a breakthrough. As his cultivation advanced, resource consumption grew. Naturally, the more amulets he could get, the better. The amulets that Lu Yi acquired had to be shared with both Yi and Amber. Fortunately, He wasn't very demanding when it came to his cultivation environment. While a favorable environment was beneficial, it wasn't essential. He just had to consume spirit pills. This advantage was something most cultivators couldn't hope to gain. Several days had passed since his agreed-upon 1-month deadline with Li Baxian, so it was time to return to the Cloud River battlefield to meet with him. Even though he had 6 golden amulets left, he had to hand them over to his 4th senior brother and Feng Yuechun. After all, those were their possessions. There was still that Primus-level wisp of sanctification that he had to place in a suitable location in the Cloud River battlefield. While Lu Yi wasn't so needy with his conditions, the same couldn't be said for Yi, not to mention his 4th senior brother and Feng Yuechun, as well as Zhu Jia. Thinking of Zhu Jia, Lu Ye's eyes couldn't help but twitch. The last time he had been in contact with Zhu Jia was nearly 2 months ago. At that time, Zhu Jia had gotten lost in the Cloud River battlefield, so Lu Yi instructed him to wait in a certain location. After so much time had passed, he had no idea how Zhu Jia was faring. Speaking of which, he had been in the Carnage Coliseum for almost 20 days, and Zhu Jia hadn't reached out to him. After tidying up a bit, Lu Yi left the summit of bamboos with Amber, quickly arriving at the summit of fortitude. He met with Shui Yuan and informed her of his intention to enter the Cloud River battlefield, which Shui Yuan did not oppose, only cautioning him to be careful. After all, for cultivators in the Cloud River realm, training in the Cloud River battlefield was the fastest way to advance as it was the only place to obtain amulets. After bidding farewell to Shui Yuan, Lu Yi headed straight to the Sanctum of Providence. He pressed his hand on the Divine Opportunity column, then connected his consciousness to the Cloud River battlefield. In the next instant, a vast array of lights appeared in his consciousness. Each light represented a Divine Opportunity column. Lu Yi could freely choose a light to enter the location of the respective Divine Opportunity column. Last time, it was through this method that he arrived directly in a Divine Trade Association. However, amid the myriad of lights, one light was particularly distinct. While the others were white, this light was uniquely blue. After a brief thought, Lu Yi realized that the blue light represented the Divine Opportunity column he had called forth at the Carnage Coliseum. Chapter 553, Re-entering the Cloud River battlefield. The Divine Opportunity columns summoned with the use of a cultivator's contribution points could only be used by the ones who summoned them and anyone with their permission. Other people were unable to use that particular column. So, even though the Divine Opportunity column in the Carnage Coliseum was worth 100,000 contributions, it was nothing more than abandoned waste in the end. He hadn't agreed with Li Baxian on a meeting place, but Lu Yi had a feeling that he would be waiting near the Carnage Coliseum. So, after just a moment of thought, Lu Yi picked the blue light. As his vision distorted, his body grew light. In the blink of an eye, his figure disappeared from the Sanctum of Providence. In the Cloud River battlefield, where the Carnage Coliseum was, Lu Yi appeared before the Divine Opportunity column and immediately began looking around his surroundings. Nothing seemed out of place here. This place was bustling more than a month ago, but as the Carnage Coliseum had been closed for such a long amount of time, there were naturally no more cultivators hanging about this area. However, Lu Yi could still spot traces of a large battle in his surroundings, especially where Lu Yi used glyph, Fire Phoenix. The ground there was scorched, showing the intensity of the battle that went on that day. Lu Yi pressed on his battlefield imprint and sent out a message. "Fourth senior brother, I've returned." It wasn't long before he received Li Baxian's reply. Just as Lu Yi guessed, Li Baxian and Feng Yuechun did not head far. Since they did not agree on a meeting place beforehand, the two of them had been training within a radius of around 500 kilometers from here while they waited for Lu Ye's return. They conversed briefly and chose to meet up at the nearby Divine Trade Association. Then, Lu Yi messaged Zhu Jia. It was a brief message stating, "Location." Atop a certain spirit peak, a large figure resembling a large statue sat on the ground, traces of dust and frost over its body. The area where it sat was practically covered in fallen leaves. The large figure did not breathe, and its aura was extremely dim. There also seemed to be hardly any vitality flowing out of it. Even if someone did walk by it, they would only assume that it was a dead man. After sitting here for more than 2 months, Zhu Jia had entered a state of stillness. After receiving Lu Ye's message to wait there, he had obediently kept still until now. He did not even feel the time passing by. It wasn't until he felt a reaction from his battlefield imprint that Zhu Jia slowly opened his eyes to check on it. Leaves trickled down as he moved, and 2 birds that were nesting on his head flapped their wings and flew away. Zhu Jia scratched his head and caught a bird's nest from the top of it. Seemingly finding it a shame to destroy it, he put it back on his head after some thought. Zhu Jia was confused when Lu Yi asked him for his location, but he gave him his current position anyway. On the other end, when Lu Yi saw Zhu Jia's response, he was stunned, the reason being that the location he was in was exactly the same as the one he gave him nearly 2 months ago. You never moved? Nope. Wait there for me. Okay. It wasn't until Zhu Jia ended the conversation with Lu Yi that he noticed the changes in his environment. Looking around, he saw giant wolves the size of calves either squatting or standing in all directions, their beast eyes staring intently at him. Their numbers were quite large, and there seemed to be at least hundreds of them. Any other cultivator would be shocked to encounter such a thing, but Zhu Jia only froze for a moment since he didn't see any malice in the eyes of those wolves, but a more human sense of surprise and curiosity. These giant wolves seemed to be surprised that Zhu Jia was alive. After all, Zhu Jia had not moved for nearly 2 months, nor did he show any clear signs of vitality. None of the wolves expected him to be a living thing. After watching them for a moment, Zhu Jia shut his eyes again and soon entered the same bizarrely still state. He didn't feel any sense of crisis being surrounded by such a large pack of wolves. In his mind, if the other party didn't harbor any malicious intent towards him, then it didn't matter. What was more, even if the wolves were going to gang up on him, he wasn't without the power to defend himself. Seeing that Zhu Jia had fallen silent again, the wolves that were in a bit of commotion calmed down as well, and a while later, one of them went up to Zhu Jia and sniffed him carefully as if to ascertain whether this guy in front of him was actually alive or dead. Eventually, it walked away in confusion. As night fell, the bright moon and sparse stars appeared in the sky. As he was enveloped by the moonlight, a milky glow suddenly appeared on Zhu Jia's body. That light seemed to have a strange resonance with the moon in the sky, drawing the moon into pouring down its essence. As far as the eye could see, moon essence surged incessantly on the large spirit peak, bathing it in that milky white glow, giving the spirit peak an extremely sacred appearance. Zhu Jia could cultivate through breathing moon essence in and out, something which Lu Yi had long known. Amber had also followed along with Zhu Jia to cultivate in the same way, and according to Yi's observation, Amber gained a lot out of it. It was just a pity that they never saw each other again since leaving the Spirit Creek battlefield. This pack of wolves were drawn to the Spirit Peak due to the strange occurrences that happened every night. If Amber could benefit from cultivating with Zhu Jia, then so could these wolves. The wolves had been aware of Zhu Jia's presence 5 days since he ended up here, but spirit beasts were simple-minded. Whether Zhu Jia was dead or alive, it was an existence that could bring about great benefit to them, so even when Zhu Jia woke up, the wolves did not show him the slightest hint of malice. In their minds, Zhu Jia was equivalent to a divine relic to their pack, something that could make them grow stronger at a rapid rate, and that was why they stayed here the whole time. As the essence of the moon poured down, each wolf instinctively raised and breathed the essence in. As the moon rose into the sky, the anomaly on the spirit peak became even clearer. But the wolves weren't the only ones attracted by the scene. Other spirit beasts were present too. Spirit beasts were strongly territorial, so such a relic that could enhance the strength of one's tribe had long been regarded by the wolf pack as their forbidden possession that other spirit beasts were not to lay their hands on. So, on almost every moonlit night, the wolves fought with the other spirit beasts that were attracted to the area, and it was through these fights that the wolves established their monopoly over this territory. Zhu Jia was completely unaware of these goings-on. He always thought that he was just taking a short break. At the Divine Trade Association, in a guest room, Lu Yi was cultivating while reading. When a knock came at the door, Yi got up to open it. Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan, who wore masks of a boy and a girl, arrived together. Lu Yi got up to greet them. Taking off his mask, Li Baxian had a look of shame on his face. Little junior brother, you have truly suffered in the Carnage Coliseum, and as your senior brother, I wasn't able to do anything to help. For that, I'm ashamed. During this period of time, every time he recalled what happened in the Carnage Coliseum, Li Baxian would feel himself racked with guilt. Fortunately, however, Lu Yi had a strong heritage and the favor of the heavens, so he was still able to escape from that desperate situation at the very end. Lu Yi reassured him. Don't beat yourself up over it, senior brother. When I was being hunted down, I'd received aid from many of the Grand Sky Coalition's experts. If it weren't for senior brother's connections, then I wouldn't have been able to hold out until the end. Li Baxian sighed. In the end, it's most important for one to be strong themselves. In the Spirit Creek battlefield, he and Feng Yuechan dominated for many years, but upon arriving at the Cloud River battlefield, the fame of their past did not bring them any conveniences, but instead brought them danger, something which he couldn't help but sigh at. And how could it be any different for Lu Yi? Before the Carnage Coliseum, he didn't have too many worries walking about in the Cloud River battlefield, but after the incident, he was sure that the Thousand Demon Ridge would spare no effort in finding out where he was and to hunt him down again. In the future, his situation in the Cloud River battlefield may not be as peaceful as before. Next to them, Feng Yuechan advised, strength will grow bit by bit, so there's no need to rush. Compared to others, our cultivation levels have already been rising quickly. Senior Sister Feng is right. Lu Yi invited the two to sit down whilst he poured them cups of tea. Only then did he bring out the 6 golden amulets and pushed it to the two of them. These are for senior brother and senior sister Feng. I've already used my share. Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan did not refuse the amulets and stored them away. With these golden amulets, they would be able to make a breakthrough into the 5th order in a short amount of time. Such a speed in cultivation could not be described as slow by any means, and with both of them in the 5th order, even if they were to bump into a 7th order cultivator in the future, they may not be any match for them. Lu Yi also took out his spirit beast bag and took out the fat white Primus level wisp of sanctification from it. So this is the Primus level wisp of sanctification? Other than Lu Yi, everyone present couldn't help but look at the object in curiosity, as it was their first time seeing it. Yi went forward and gave it a poke, causing the wisp of sanctification to curl up in response. It's still alive? Feng Yuechan was astonished. What do you think, senior brother? Should we use this wisp of sanctification ourselves, or should we sell it? Lu Yi asked. Li Baxian pondered for a while before responding. If we sell it, then we certainly wouldn't have to worry about finding a buyer. However, we don't really have much of a need for idle resources. If we were to trade it for amulets, then we aren't sure how much a Primus level wisp of sanctification is worth either. Moreover, other people may not be able to gather enough amulets for it within a short amount of time. Right now, all of us are in the 4th order, so we'll be here in the Cloud River battlefield for a long time. If we can have our own arcane glade, then our cultivation would become more efficient. Lu Yi nodded. I think so too. Instead of selling the Primus level wisp of sanctification for some amulets, it would be better to use it themselves. Furthermore, even if they were to ascend into the real lake realm in the future and left the Cloud River battlefield, the Primus level arcane glade that was left behind could be passed on to the other disciples of their sect. In the Cloud River battlefield, there were many such arcane glades that had been passed down for generations, all of which were the exclusive domains of each sect. But if we really want to use it for ourselves, then there are some issues that have to be resolved, the largest one being the location of the arcane glade. Li Baxian slowly spoke up. With a Primus level wisp of sanctification, then as long as one was in the Cloud River battlefield, one could create a Primus level arcane glade anywhere, but if one did not choose the location well, then they would surely meet with a lot of trouble in the future. Firstly, they had to make sure that it was well hidden. However, for high-flying Cloud River realm cultivators, where could one find a hidden place to begin with? Unless it was some forbidden area that some cultivators dared not tread into, like the myriad poison forest or the burning lands of the Spirit Creek battlefield. Even Lu Ye's wards could not guarantee much. Back then, they had a tertiary-level arcane glade, and Louis had also left wards behind when he left. In the end, it had still been breached, and his wisp of sanctification had been plundered. So you're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.